the number one theme that I kept hearing over the last 1 year is transformation. At the Mobile World Congress in February, it was all about transformation. But as a network geek, my initial thought was, network transformation. But Singtel and a few others stopped me in the tracks, in my thinking tracks, and said, no, it's about network, business, and people transformation. Outline what the transformation journey is, and I call this the journey along the open road, OP to the power N. And the meaning of that would become clear quite soon. So I'll take the next 20, 25 minutes walking you through this journey. And just in case, some of you may not know Ciena, or you may know Ciena, we are a WAN connectivity solution provider, equipment to operators worldwide. We sell to the top 30 of the 40 worldwide operators. We sell to 1,000 enterprises worldwide. And essentially, what have we done? We have opened up bandwidth bottlenecks with lots of capacity in the network. For example, over the last year, 2013, we shipped almost 1,000 terabits of capacity worldwide. An important point to remember. We also are somewhat, I would say, transforming the network from the legacy TDM to more of a packet connectivity, and that's where Ethernet comes in. And we are well known across the industry for bringing Ethernet all the way to the service delivery point. For example, 50% of the cell towers in the US. And as connectivity solutions have evolved, we are increasingly finding ourselves providing the connectivity to securely connect clouds, data centers, cloud providers, and telecom operators worldwide. That is a very, very important trend for us as well as for the industry. And one of our partners in this transformation journey is, of course, PLDT. My understanding of PLDT was from a combination of both conversations with some of the execs, but also, following what they have done. And you might know PLDT better than I do, and as I see it, they're a global solution provider with significant amount of fiber assets, more importantly, multimedia and content assets as well. In the age of content delivery. Look at the second box. Almost 24% growth in data revenue, in combination with tremendous amount of data traffic growth. That's a significant achievement. How is that possible? Because they have a singular focus, transforming with scale, but also attempting to achieve good efficiencies in the delivery of those data traffic. Yes, broadbanding the nation. Yes, improving the LTE coverage across the domestic footprint, establishing a solid presence across the globe with high-capacity networking. But is that sufficient? Do they need to do more? Is the transformation journey complete with just addressing scale? That is what keeps me up at night as a network architect. And that is what I would like to ask all of you to think about as well. What more could a network operator do? And if I look at the landscape, few aspects of the landscape are well known to us, but let me try to put a different spin on it. On the far left, of your left, the connectivity model is changing. It's no longer about connecting places with static, pre-configured connectivity. It's about connecting people that could be mobile, number one, and increasingly connecting a very large number of machines scale, the number of endpoints is growing tremendously. Challenge number one. Challenge number two, the box in the center says, where is all this data traffic coming from? Typically, an operator with multimedia assets such as PLDT would be delivering most of the content from their own content sources, video headends. But for the last 2 years, all that the operators could talk about at the Mobile World Congress is how to handle the OTT players, the bandwidth tsunami. Every operator showed a nice chart that showed the hockey stick growth of traffic in their network once they started turning on extensive coverage of LTE and broadbanding the nation. How do you handle that scale of traffic? Second point. But what is probably interesting for the geeks in the world is the last one. I have no good way of identifying the location of the traffic, source or sink. I am here in Manila, not in Houston now, and I just watched a Comedy Central video. So the location of the user of the service endpoint is no longer fixed. You don't know where it is. The content is also not fixed. I can source the content from anywhere for any duration. So I classify that as a zone of uncertainty in planning the network. How do I do that now? It's a major challenge. And in fact, before the end of this decade, people might be tempted to say that what you have seen so far in the mid-2000s is basically rounding error. This February, when I was presenting somewhere, and I saw a tweet on my phone from Tata Communications that said, by golly, 90% of the global data traffic that you have seen so far was just generated in the last 2 years. That's your exponential growth in traffic. How should an operator like PLDT conceptualize, visualize, and establish a network architecture for this kind of scale? And if you step back and say, wait a second, what happened to the enterprise community? And I look at the surveys from the standard players like Gartner. Look at the box that I've highlighted. The expectation is almost half or more of the critical apps for an enterprise is going to be sourced from the cloud. The good news, we have a runway to meet that. We can prepare now to meet that onslaught of 50% of the traffic or 50% of the apps being sourced from the cloud. But if the apps were coming and being delivered from the cloud, if I were PLDT, my first question would be, what is the expectation of an enterprise? Just talk to Scott, who is managing a BPO. He's going to come and talk later on. What is his expectation from an operator, global operator like PLDT, in order to meet his business challenges? The most important thing that he would be worried about is, look, I have to be very agile in my business activity in order to survive. My expectations are, I want to be able to get network functionality on demand. I want performance on demand. I want control of what I choose, when I want, self-service. And he's going to talk about that. Listen to this, it'll be probably aligned. And by the way, I want visibility as well as to what is going on with the resources that I have marshaled to address my business challenges. And by the way, it'll be also nice, Mr. PLDT, if you could allow me to pay for what I use. That's a business model transformation that is yet to occur. 2 years ago, service providers were telling me, no way that we would do that. Today, service providers are telling me, yes, yes, we need to do that. That's transformation in their thought process. But as a network architect, I ask myself, does this drive agility elsewhere, both on the IT side of the house as well as on the network side of the house? Or is this a problem at all? Am I just barking up the wrong tree? And if I talk to the service providers, the top level conclusion that I come up with is network operators have an agility gap. And what do I mean by that? Mr. Enterprise customer comes to operator, says, give me service. He goes to Amazon Web Services, click of a button, his compute resources are up. Operator says, I can, maybe weeks, maybe days, maybe months, I don't know, depends. Not good, huh? There are some locations where it can be up to 90 days. I've just put a very conservative 60 days, but sometimes it's better, 30 days, or even less. But it's still days. You go to that enterprise customer and tell them, yes, your compute resources, seconds. Connectivity, days or weeks. In fact, the bigger challenge that I see is if there is a new service model that needs to be designed, architected, and delivered. Irene, the product manager for PLDT, wakes up one morning, has a brilliant idea for a new offering. She has lots of brilliant ideas. One of them, Jovi says, go implement. It might take a long time from her brain cells to actually delivering it in the network. That's no good. So the question that I ask myself is, how can we leverage some of the great advances that IT has made in the likes of an Amazon or in the likes of a Google and apply it to the connectivity piece of the puzzle so that we could maybe transform the network. So, we all know that information-powered businesses seem to be more valuable in the marketplace. Examples, we've already talked about a few. What do? They have demonstrated solid growth in revenues, profits, lower costs, and boy, oh boy, they are innovating like crazy. Do you know how rapidly Amazon delivers new features for their compute and store infrastructure? So fast. I would love, as a network solutions provider, I would love to be that fast. And what do? They collect information, they analyze, device an offering, and the standard 4 Ps of marketing takes over. But how do they do it? Big data, real-time collection of data, analyzing it with automated tools, and there are players in this room that can talk more in much greater depth than I can. But essentially, they're able to transform their business into a very agile business. Why can't the network be like that? I would love for it to be that way. But all hope is not lost, because as I look at the technology landscape, I'm very, very excited with a few technologies that I see over the horizon, and in fact, lots of proof of concepts as well. that is going to enable the operators of the world to transform in such a way that we recognize that there are implications, such as the connect function now must become as on-demand as compute and storage, number one. The scale and performance and resilience of the network is going to become more important than ever because all applications are being delivered from the cloud. But once we virtualize and make the connect programmable, it has to dance together with the compute and store as an ecosystem, as an equal partner at the table, number one, in my opinion, because it is so critical to the overall business value that is being created, right? But such a programmable framework of compute, store, and connect cannot happen, in my opinion, without the ecosystem being able to develop the necessary open interfaces between the various sort of layers of the network, if you will. You want the applications or the users to be able to understand the state of the resources that they have, so get information from the network, and also to be able to change the state of the network. I have a very large file size that I need to transfer, and I want to be able to do it within a short span of time. I don't have forever. How can I, the user, demand such a request of the network and get it, right? And what the industry has been talking about, and this in particular, Sienna has developed this vision, if you will, is first rethink what the network architecture looks like. I've talked about cloud. So from that perspective, the network looks very simple. The purpose of the network is to connect users to the content center and content center to content center. Just two major domains in the network. But there are technologies on the horizon where, just like IT folks virtualized an enterprise server functionality and put it in the data center as virtual machines, that virtualization concept is now being used to take complex functionality out of the network and put it in the content centers, firewall, load balancers, DPI, name it, including the function of routing. They could sit in these few content centers. When you limit the complexity of the network to few locations, the overall network becomes very simple. The job of the network is to ship bits, just like the job of a FedEx truck is to ship packages. And keeping the network simple allows you to now start to think of, maybe I can define these network pieces as functions, as small atomic functions that can then be programmable. This is an important trend that I'm actually watching, and I would request everybody to keep a close eye on, because it has a fundamental change in how players like us are going to react. And content can be also at the enterprise location as well. This is the private cloud, if you will, right? And when I have the network functionality now decomposed and made it into apps, I can request functionality of the network, programmable network. And in the Sienna sort of vernacular, we call that open. Optical and packet to the scale n, exponential scale, but also it's about open interfaces. Scale, programmability with network apps. And I'm sure everyone in this room probably has heard the three-letter acronym called SDN ad nauseum. Okay? It's software-defined networking. That's another piece of the technology that is going to fundamentally change how wide area networks is going to be defined and constructed, just like it has already rapidly changed the internal guts of the data center. Okay. You would like it to be, provisionable in hours or minutes instead of days or weeks. You would like it to be very flexible so as to reconfigure the programmable network in such ways as to, be on demand, just like compute and store is. And of course, matching the performance that is required by the applications that use the network. Dream state, but I'm very hopeful that we can reach there. And the industry, in general, has recognized this paradigm shift from where we are today to a cloud-centric model and asked the question over the last 10 years, how should the connectivity services be defined in order to enable being an equal partner at the table with compute and store? So MEF, the organization that I've been leading in this area, over the last decade, we have identified very standard services that operators can hang their hat on, network solution providers can hang their hat on, and deliver connectivity that starts to meet some of the needs. But it was still constrained in certain fashions, and we continued to work our way through with the help of a lot of the global service providers to define a sort of a CE 2.0, just like you see 3G, 4G in wireless and LTE. We are sort of packaging our solutions as CE 1.0 and CE 2.0. And with CE 2.0 just being sort of, launched in the last year or two, we have really made the connectivity to be sort of interoperable across the globe, to be able to have very standard way of defining classes of service for the connectivity so applications can get the right performance that they need. And it could be used for the two domains that I talked about, access to cloud and content center to content center interconnect, which is also called the data center interconnect in typical terminology, right? But all this is still the vanilla model of predetermined connectivity, fixed connectivity. But what we want to get to as an industry is the ability to do automated sort of cloud-like, cloud-centric model, where we would have either an API-driven or there is intelligence in the network that can recognize. Scott's team is trying to dramatically increase the amount of files that they are transferring. Aha! I, as the network, recognize that such a transmission is going to occur. Let me change the network state within the bounds set by the operator. Threshold driven. In fact, the marketplace is already announcing these kinds of behaviors, offerings, network as a service. Is that a pie in the sky, or is that something real? And in fact, it is getting very, very real, because what we have done, as an example, is to put together the solution to demonstrate, in fact, the very tenets that I've just laid out. At the bottom of the slide, I show the ugly orange on the left is the sort of the private cloud, if you will, for the enterprise. And the ugly brown on the far right is the public cloud, which you can think of as PLDT, for example, or AT&T. An enterprise, and let's say the enterprise is Rich International Bank of RAGHU, wants cloud services in a hybrid model, because I want to be able to burst all my applications into the cloud when needed. And what we have done is we have created the control layer in such a way that it can know the global state of the network, feed that up to the application layer, either to the far right, which is a data center orchestrator, or to the far left on the slide, which is Rich International Bank of RAGHU looking at a portal. So I know what the state of my network is, my slice of the network. And based on the app that I have on my nice iPad or Samsung tab, whichever is your favorite tab, I could request a change in the network state. And therefore, the whole chain of events cascades through, aligns the state request that I want with the state of the network. Voila, magic happens. And I have another app, just like Nike's Fit, for example. I would have another app that tells me what the health of the network is. Cool, huh? I'm excited. In fact, in our demos, we used VMware's orchestrator to notify us that a vMotion is going to occur, and therefore we adjusted the state of the network in order to be ready for that vMotion for a certain duration of the time, and we were able to do it with no problems. Right? This is exciting stuff, huh? Now I can visualize the operator to be very agile, make their connect an equal partner in the conversation with compute and store. As a network architect, I'm very excited, but I don't know about the rest of the people. But in summary, I would like to highlight a couple of implications of this. And I tell this to many of my industry colleagues. Stop for a moment and think, who is the network designer of the future? It's not the vanilla network architect designing something. There is a tight coupling between the network architect and the network operations. Maybe that person is the API expert of the future. Who knows? DevOps. This is an interesting thing. But all this leads me to a concept that I call consumption, agile consumption. I, as a network architect, would like to move away from thinking about or worrying about complexity in the network to enabling the consumption of the network. Because if I have something in the network, if it's sitting idle, it's an opportunity cost. I have lost the opportunity to monetize that capability. And so there becomes a consumption gap between what you have and what is being used. So I, as a network architect, have to change my mindset about how do I have a network capability, how do I make sure it gets consumed by Scott as an enterprise, for example? What would make him want to consume and therefore I make money? When I say I mean the network operator. Okay, with that, as a set of few questions and thoughts from me, I will stop now, and hopefully it has been a useful sort of setting the table for the discussions over the course of the day, because there's going to be a lot of discussions from enterprises as well as ICT implementations that we should constantly think, how can we leverage those insights into making the network more agile and making it an equal partner in the conversation between compute, connect, and store. Okay? Thanks very much, guys.